Chris Marek has finally broken his silence, and what he said has left fans stunned. For years, viewers of Little People, Big World have seen Chris as Amy Roloff's calm, supportive partner. But now, his words are making it clear. He's tired of being seen as part of the Roloff machine. Chris isn't holding back anymore, and his frustration is hitting home with fans everywhere. The question at the heart of his statement is simple, yet explosive. Did Chris Marek marry Amy Roloff, or did he unknowingly marry into decades of family baggage tied to the Roloff name, the farm, and a legacy he never signed up for? To understand why his comments are shaking the fanbase, we need to go back. Amy Roloff's past with Matt and the Roloff Farm is legendary in reality TV history. The farm was once a symbol of dreams, success, and family unity, but it also became a battlefield of conflict, divorce, and bitter division. And ever since Amy moved on with Chris, many fans, and even the family itself, have struggled to separate Amy and Chris's marriage from Amy and Matt's history. For Chris, this has meant constantly living in the shadow of the Roloff legacy. Even his marriage celebrations were tied back to the farm, to Matt, and to the show that made the Roloffs famous. Instead of being seen simply as Amy's loving husband, he's often painted as the outsider navigating a never-ending family soap opera. Now, with his bold statement, Chris is drawing a line. He's reminding everyone that he didn't marry Roloff Farms, Roloff drama, or Roloff history. He married Amy. And fans are reacting. Some are applauding him for finally saying what needed to be said, while others are worried about what this might mean for Amy, her family ties, and the future of Little People, Big World. One thing's for sure. Chris's words have struck a nerve, and they're forcing everyone to ask the question. When you marry into a family as famous and complicated as the Roloffs, can you ever escape the weight of their legacy? Hello viewers, welcome back to my channel. For Roloff family latest news update, please subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon. Chris Marek's statement, "I married Amy, not the Roloff legacy," wasn't just a casual remark. It was a breaking point, a moment where years of quiet patience seemed to boil over into public frustration. For fans who have followed Little People, Big World for decades, the remark carries heavy weight because it highlights the very tension that has defined Amy Roloff's life after her divorce from Matt. How to move forward while the shadow of Roloff Farms and the family legacy still looms. From the beginning, Chris's role as Amy's second husband has never been simple. He entered a family that had already spent over 15 years on reality television, with every disagreement, feud, and family milestone played out on camera. When Amy divorced Matt, fans celebrated her fresh start and were excited to see her find love again. But Chris didn't just marry Amy. By default, he married into years of unresolved baggage, lingering rivalries, and a public that still saw her primarily as Matt's ex-wife. Much of Chris's tension stems from the never-ending conversation about Roloff Farms. The farm wasn't just land. It was a symbol of Matt and Amy's marriage, their joint struggles, and eventually their divorce. After Amy sold her share of the farm to Matt, fans hoped the chapter would be closed. But in reality, the farm continued to cast a long shadow. Every holiday, every family gathering, every public comment seemed to circle back to who controlled the farm, who was excluded, and who was responsible for the family rift. For Chris, trying to build a new life with Amy meant constantly confronting Matt's name, Matt's choices, and Matt's land. This frustration grew as Chris himself became a recurring character on the show. While some viewers warmed to him, many were quick to label him the outsider, or even a replacement for Matt. The comparison was constant. His every gesture as a husband was measured against Matt's history with Amy. For someone who never sought fame or a role in family politics, being dragged into that cycle has been exhausting. His recent statement reflects a desire to break free from that narrative. He wants to be seen simply as Amy's husband, not a stand-in in the continuing saga of Roloff family drama. Fans themselves are divided on this breaking point. Some praise Chris for finally saying what has long needed to be said, that Amy deserves to move forward, and so does he. They admire his honesty and his willingness to stand up for himself and his marriage. Others, however, criticize the timing and tone, suggesting that when you marry into such a high-profile family, the legacy comes with a package. For those viewers, Chris's frustration reads as naive. Did he really expect to marry Amy Roloff and not deal with the Roloff name? But the truth is, Chris's point cuts deeper than just the farm or the fame. His words expose the ongoing tension between the life Amy wants to live now and the life she once shared with Matt that fans won't let her forget. It's a struggle of identity, boundaries, and emotional freedom. And in saying, "I married Amy," not the Roloff legacy, Chris is drawing a line in the sand, reminding fans and perhaps even Amy herself that their marriage is about the present and future, not the past. When you talk about the Roloff family, it's impossible to ignore the farm. Roloff Farms is more than a stretch of land in Oregon. It's a legacy, a living monument to decades of dreams, struggles, and conflicts. For years, it has been the beating heart of Little People, Big World. It wasn't just a backdrop. It was almost a character in its own right. From pumpkin season to weddings to countless family milestones, every major chapter in the Roloff story seemed to circle back to the farm. But with that legacy comes a shadow, one that now hangs over Amy Roloff and, by extension, her husband Chris Marek. When Amy and Matt divorced, Amy made the life-altering decision to leave the farm behind. She sold her portion of the property, packed up her memories, and started a new life with Chris. On the surface, that may have looked like a fresh start. But in reality, Amy didn't just walk away from the farm. She walked away from a legacy that continues to ripple through her present. And whether Chris wanted it or not, he inherited the emotional baggage tied to that farm the moment he married her. To many fans, Chris Marek is often unfairly framed as Amy's second chapter, but TLC rarely allows him to stand on his own. Time and time again, the show seems to pull him back into Roloff family drama. Even scenes meant to highlight Amy and Chris's new life together are edited or presented in the shadow of Roloff Farms, contrasting their life now with Amy's life then. For Chris, who simply wanted to marry the woman he loves, this means constantly competing with the ghost of Roloff history. The bigger question is, did Chris know what he was signing up for? Did he expect that marrying Amy also meant marrying into decades of complicated family ties, farm ownership battles, and unresolved resentments? Or did he underestimate just how tightly the Roloff legacy would cling to them, even after Amy officially left the land behind? For many viewers, Chris often looks like the calm voice of reason, someone who doesn't thrive on conflict but instead tries to keep things lighthearted and steady. Yet the Roloff family narrative, especially on TLC, doesn't always give him the space to exist outside the drama. He may have hoped for a life with Amy free from Matt's shadow, free from the farm's weight, but that shadow seems impossible to escape. The farm is not just acres of soil, it's years of history, financial disputes, broken relationships, and public spectacle. And no matter how far Chris and Amy move physically or emotionally from it, Roloff Farms remains tethered to them like an unshakable chain. When it comes to the Roloff family, there's no denying that two very different couples dominate the conversation, Amy and Chris on one side, and Matt and Caryn on the other. Both pairs represent different chapters of the Roloff story, but they're often unfairly pitted against each other by fans, tabloids, and even, at times, the TLC cameras themselves. For Amy and Chris, their relationship is rooted in building something fresh. Chris often emphasizes that his marriage is not about competing with Matt's long-standing legacy. It's about creating a new chapter with Amy. He wants to focus on their adventures, their travel, their home life away from the shadow of the farm. Yet time and time again, TLC frames his role in comparison to Matt, pulling him back into a narrative he never asked to inherit. Meanwhile, Matt and Caryn are painted as the power couple of the farm. Caryn has been by Matt's side through many of the farm's expansions, business ventures, and now the ongoing saga of Roloff Farms being up for sale. Some fans see them as the practical, forward-thinking pair, while others accuse them of overshadowing Amy's voice and erasing her history on the land. The contrast between these dynamics creates constant tension, not just within the family, but in the fan community that follows every move. The rivalry, whether real or exaggerated by TLC, is most visible during family gatherings. Weddings, birthdays, and even pumpkin season events often come with a side of awkward glances and subtle tension. Cameras linger on interactions that fans can read as frosty, Amy and Caryn avoiding each other at the dinner table, Chris being drawn into conversations about Matt's projects, and Matt making decisions that ripple into Amy and Chris's lives. What makes it more complicated is that the fans themselves fuel the divide. Social media threads often become battlegrounds, Team Amy and Chris versus Team Matt and Caryn. Supporters of Amy admire Chris's patience and his desire to give Amy a fresh start, while supporters of Matt and Caryn point to their ambition and practicality in moving the farm forward. The show thrives on this polarization, but for the couples themselves, it creates added strain, transforming personal relationships into public debates. Chris has said, both in interviews and on the show, that he doesn't want to be in constant competition with Matt. His focus is Amy, sharing life, enjoying retirement, traveling, and finding peace. But the reality is, with cameras rolling, every family interaction becomes a storyline, every awkward silence a potential headline. For Chris, that means he's often placed in a role he never auditioned for, the man trying to step out of Matt's shadow, even when all he wants is to shine beside Amy. When we shift focus to the relationship dynamics of these two very different couples, Amy and Chris on one side, Matt and Caryn on the other, the contrasts could not be clearer. Fans of Little People, Big World have long observed how TLC frames these relationships almost as foils, the former husband and wife moving on with new partners, but still tethered together by history, family, and, of course, the farm. Amy and Chris present themselves as a couple rooted in companionship, patience, and the joy of new beginnings. Chris often emphasizes that his marriage to Amy is about building a life together now, not trying to compete with decades of history tied to Matt, the farm, and the Roloff legacy. He has repeatedly expressed that he didn't marry into a feud, he married Amy. This outlook appeals to fans who admire his grounded, low-drama approach. Many view Chris as the calm balance to Amy's passionate personality, a man who gently encourages her while respecting the emotional baggage she still carries from her divorce. By contrast, Matt and Caryn's dynamic has often been painted as more controversial. Caryn, once a longtime Roloff Farms employee, became Matt's partner in the aftermath of his split with Amy. For some fans, this has never sat right. Their relationship has been portrayed by critics as tangled up with questions of loyalty, timing, and blurred boundaries. Others, however, see Matt and Caryn as pragmatic and forward-looking, two people who share a vision for the farm's future and aren't afraid of criticism. Their bond often reflects Matt's ambitious, fast-moving personality, always thinking about projects, legacies, and business ventures. What complicates matters is how fans themselves often pit these couples against each other. Social media threads are full of comparisons. Amy and Chris are labeled the heart-driven pair, while Matt and Caryn are branded the business-driven couple. It's almost as if viewers are forced to choose sides, Team Amy and Chris or Team Matt and Caryn, when in reality, both couples are simply trying to navigate relationships under the microscope of a long-running reality show. But despite best intentions, awkwardness is inevitable. Family gatherings filmed by TLC often highlight subtle but undeniable tensions. Imagine the discomfort of sitting across from your ex-spouse, with new partners at the same table, all while cameras roll and producers nudge conversations towards sensitive topics. Fans recall birthday parties, pumpkin season events, and even casual family dinners where body language told the story more loudly than words. Amy trying to remain cordial, Matt pushing his vision for the farm, Chris looking slightly uncomfortable, and Caryn choosing whether to engage or pull back. Chris, in particular, often seems caught in an unenviable position. He wants to support Amy fully while respecting the role Matt still plays as father to her children. Yet, TLC frequently frames moments in a way that pulls him into the old narrative of Matt versus Amy. Instead of being allowed to simply exist as Amy's husband, Chris becomes part of the comparison game. He's the new man at the table, constantly measured against Matt's long-standing influence in Amy's life. For viewers, these moments of tension are compelling television, but for the people involved, they're exhausting. Chris has even hinted in interviews that while he knew marrying Amy meant being connected to the Roloff world, he didn't expect the shadow of the farm and the show to loom so large. He wants to carve out new traditions with Amy. Weekend motorcycle rides, simple dinners at home, trips with friends, without every move being framed in contrast to Matt and Caryn. At the same time, Matt and Caryn have their own struggles with perception. Caryn has faced years of criticism from fans who question her role in the breakdown of Matt and Amy's marriage, even though both Matt and Amy have repeatedly stated that the marriage was struggling long before Caryn entered the picture. The lingering skepticism from fans means Caryn is often cast as the other woman, regardless of reality. That constant scrutiny affects how she and Matt present themselves on screen, often leading to defensive or cautious interactions during family events. In many ways, the clash of these couples represents the broader theme of Little People, Big World, how history, family, and business intersect in messy, emotional ways. Amy and Chris may long for peace and a fresh start, but the show thrives on contrast and conflict. Meanwhile, Matt and Caryn may want to be seen as simply moving forward, but their very existence alongside Amy and Chris keeps fans debating loyalty, fairness, and who's truly winning in this ongoing saga. As Chris's frustrations bubble closer to the surface, fans are asking the big question: what happens next? For years, Little People, Big World has thrived on drama, conflict over Roloff Farms, old wounds between Matt and Amy, and even the tension between the adult children. But Chris's statement, "I married Amy, not the Roloff legacy," feels like a line in the sand. It's a signal that his patience may be running out. So, will Chris step away from the show? It's entirely possible. Chris never set out to be a reality TV personality. He was a real estate agent who happened to fall in love with Amy. Viewers have noted that his appearances often seem reluctant, as if he's more comfortable supporting Amy behind the scenes than navigating the constant pressures of TLC cameras. If the producers continue to pull him deeper into Roloff family drama, Chris might decide enough is enough. After all, protecting his marriage and his peace of mind may outweigh the perks of reality TV exposure. But that raises another question. If Chris leaves, what about Amy? For Amy, the show has been her life for nearly 2 decades. She's shared her highest highs and her deepest lows in front of millions. Yet, she has also admitted at times that the constant spotlight can be exhausting. If supporting Chris means pulling back from Little People, Big World, she could face the hardest decision of her post-divorce journey: to continue holding onto the show that built her platform, or to step away in order to protect her new marriage. Fans already speculate that Amy's loyalty to Chris could tip the scales because, as she said before, she doesn't want to repeat the mistakes of her first marriage. This dilemma isn't just personal, it's also a challenge for TLC. The network has always walked a fine line, fueling enough drama to keep viewers hooked while avoiding storylines that cross too deeply into cruelty or exploitation. If Chris chooses to pull back, TLC will have to decide whether to respect that boundary or attempt to push harder to keep him involved. And if Amy follows him out the door, that could mean a major shift for the future of the show. Without Amy, the heart and emotional anchor of Little People, Big World, many fans argue the series simply wouldn't feel the same. So, what might the Roloff family dynamics look like moving forward? One scenario is that the show doubles down on Matt and Caryn's storyline, focusing on their relationship, wedding plans, and eventual future on the farm. Another possibility is a greater emphasis on Zach and Tori, who already carry a large portion of the fanbase's interest with their young children and family life. But there's also the looming possibility that the fractures have grown too deep, that the show could be reaching its natural end. After nearly 2 decades on air, could Chris's breaking point signal the beginning of the final chapter? Fans are already debating online whether it's time for TLC to let the Roloffs step back from the cameras and simply live their lives. Some argue that the family deserves peace after years of being in the public eye. Others insist that the messy drama is exactly what keeps the show compelling. And somewhere in the middle lies the truth. The Roloffs may not be able to escape the legacy of Little People, Big World, no matter how badly Chris wishes he could separate his marriage from it. What's certain is this: The decisions Chris and Amy make now could reshape not only their marriage, but the entire future of the Roloff family on television. And fans around the world will be watching closely to see which path they choose. Marek's explosive statement has shaken up the Roloff narrative in ways no one could have anticipated. By saying, "I married Amy, not the Roloff legacy," he's exposed years of hidden tension, frustration, and the ongoing struggle of carving out an identity beyond the long shadow of Roloff Farms and family drama. This moment highlights the central truth: Chris didn't sign up to be part of a legacy battle. He married Amy to share a new life, build fresh memories, and create joy without constantly being dragged back into the past. Yet, the reality is clear. The Roloff story is never truly free of the farm, the history, or the feuds that keep resurfacing. The bigger question now is what this means for the future of Little People, Big World. Could this spark a major turning point? Will Chris step away from the cameras? Might Amy reconsider her involvement altogether in order to protect their marriage? Or could TLC lean even harder into this drama, using Chris's frustration as fuel for new storylines? No matter how it unfolds, one thing is certain: Chris's voice has added a powerful new layer to the ongoing saga of the Roloffs. His words are more than a passing comment. They could reshape how fans view not just him and Amy, but the entire family dynamic moving forward. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.